I'm Ramona Pringle. I'm a multi-platform producer and a host and part of the new media faculty here at Ryerson University. I'm also, I'm a curious human being. My work explores the intersection between the real world and the virtual world and the relationship between humans and our avatars. We hear a lot about the real world versus the online world, as if the two are at odds with each other, but I think it's time that we actually start thinking about these two worlds as one. Why? Because we're connected to technology constantly, and that's not going to change anytime soon. In fact, according to futurist Ray Kurzweil, who Time magazine calls the heir to Thomas Edison, the next 30 years are going to bring about a wave of technological innovation that forever changes what it means to be human. And yet, don't our human needs remain the same? We still long to be loved for who we are, to find a place in a community that accepts us. The thing is, as we spend more of our time online, more of our time plugged in, we're not necessarily fulfilling these needs in the real world anymore. In his book, Bowling Alone, author Robert Putnam talks about the collapse of community. He says that since the 1950s, there's been a steady decrease in in-person gatherings, things like bowling leagues. But we want to connect. Just because we're not connecting in the places that we used to doesn't mean we're not connecting. One of the places that we are finding each other is online. We may not be bowling, but we are playing video games. In fact, globally, people spend 3 billion hours a week playing online games. And that's where my story begins. I decided that I would start playing the video game World of Warcraft to see for myself how virtual worlds are fostering community and human connection. I was living in New York. I had finished my master's degree at NYU. I was teaching there, and I was working as the interactive producer for PBS Frontline's Digital Nation, so things were awesome. But something was missing. And I wasn't the only one who felt this way. All of my friends felt this massive pressure to be self-sufficient. And yet, what we really wanted was to share our lives with someone. And then I had this profound experience. I was sent to cover BlizzCon, a massive gaming convention in California. This was the most intoxicating event I'd ever covered, that I'd ever been to. Music blared and incredible graphics covered all the walls, and 30,000 people roamed the convention center dressed as their avatars come to life. I felt like I was seeing inside a secret society, only this wasn't exactly a secret society. There was 30,000 people there, and this event had sold out in 30 seconds when tickets were posted online. But what really had an impact on me on a human level was the community that I saw there. Groups of friends meeting up in person from different corners of the country, of the world, couples holding hands and pushing baby carriages. And astonishingly to me, what they all had in common was that they had met and gotten to know each other inside of this game world. Time and again, I've encountered couples who have found their soulmates, found each other inside of virtual worlds and video games. And while I am not suggesting that a video game like World of Warcraft is the new Match.com, I do see these worlds fostering a sense of community that we're increasingly lacking in the real world. Here's an example. Hannah and Pete are a couple that I met when I was producing my pilot called The Real Lives of Avatars. When they met, they lived in different countries, and now they're married. Pete says that the game enabled them to get to know each other in an almost Victorian fashion, taking it slow and writing letters and talking. I was practically in tears. I was in tears when Hannah told me about the first time they met face-to-face in person. She was petrified that it could all be smoke and mirrors. I mean, she had met him in a video game. But in her heart of hearts, she knew him better than she had ever known anyone in her entire life. So I'm asking, what's going on here? People finding community, love, real love in video games? I had to see for myself. So for people who don't know how a game like World of Warcraft works or what it even is, here's the basic gist. You log into the virtual world from anywhere on Earth, and you're sent on challenges, quests, that you have to complete in order to advance through the game or level up. So really, you can be physically separate, but inside of this virtual world, you're together with your friends, together with the other people who are playing. the first thing that you're prompted to do is to create an avatar. And when I started playing, I saw that these characters were things like night elves and goblins, and I thought there was no way I was going to get sucked into this. But I was on a mission. I wanted to see for myself what the allure of this video game was all about, so I persevered. And I created my avatar, Tristanova, a night elf and a healer. She's tall and has big eyes and blue skin. And you laugh, but from the moment that I started playing with her, I was drawn to her. You see, she's me, and little more than data, pixels on a screen, but in the massive virtual world, in the rugged terrain of this online game, we were in her territory. And I had this feeling I was gonna learn something from her. I was gonna learn about this world, and I was gonna learn about myself. But I still had no idea what I was in for. For my first quest, I was sent on a mission and had to kill 4 wild beasts. Well, I almost quit right then and there. I had decided to be a healer, not a hunter. I did not want to shoot things. That's why I hadn't played other video games before this moment. But I reminded myself that I was on a mission to find out what this primal experience was all about, what this survival experience was all about. Plus, the reason for this quest was actually to balance nature, to help sustain the environment. So I went ahead, and I did it. I didn't know what I was doing. I kind of clicked around and hit my mouse, and I hadn't read the manual, but finally I did it. I finished, and I felt this wave of pride. But I realized that I had just killed these 4 beasts, and I also felt a wave of sadness. And I whispered a mourner's prayer. Me. Not Tristanova, not my avatar. As I stared at the body of this lifeless animal on the screen, I asked myself, what have I done? And is it worth it? This was the first time that I had a visceral, human reaction to the virtual experience. But it wasn't the last. I decided that as I went forward, I wanted what I was going to call a game guide. I wanted a tour guide inside of this game world to help show me around. And I was lucky because I ended up getting a world-class game designer who also happened to be a veteran player. And he created a brand new avatar specifically matched up to my avatar, Tristanova, so with complementary skills and characteristics. And we started playing together every night. One night we were sent on a quest, and we had to deliver a scroll to a wise man on top of this mountain. And to get there, we had to circle round and round, and I started getting overly confident, and I got too close to the edge, and I fell. All the way down. And I was far from the mountaintop, I was far from my game guide, and I panicked. So understandably, when I finally saw my game guide's avatar again, I was so relieved that I ran up to him, and I didn't stop running until we were face to face, only we were avatars, so we were actually overlapping. And when I realized how close we were standing to each other, I immediately took a step back, or my avatar took a step back. Meanwhile, me in real life, I realized that my heart was beating faster, and my cheeks were flushing. And I wondered if he, miles away in another province, felt the same thing. You see, if this had been just anyone, it would have been just overlapping pixels. But because of the time that we had spent questing together, in that moment when we were shoulder to shoulder, it was real. We were friends. Part of the reason that we developed this bond was that I started relying on him. At first, I felt silly, ridiculous trailing him around. I mean, I am an independent woman. But something interesting happened to our dynamic. He started relying on me. You see, my avatar has the ability to heal others when they're wounded, and so just as I needed him to protect me, he needed me to keep him alive. And so we became this symbiotic unit, the healer and the hunter. As I kept playing, I would have these moments where I'd go, wow, that was a lot like real life, or wow, I could actually learn from that and apply it to my real life. I was learning how I could live my life better through playing a video game, and that is how the Avatar Secrets was born. The Avatar Secrets is my game world guide to real-world fulfillment. I started translating my game experiences into real-world wisdom and chronicling it so that I could help myself and help others level up in real life. The first secret or the first lesson, I guess, that I uncovered was to ask for help. It dawned on me that we're pressured to be so self-sufficient, these silos of individualism, and yet for what? Are we happier for it? Life is more fun, it's more fulfilling when we share the burden and the bounty. Part of asking for help was avatar secret number 2, knowing your own strengths and weaknesses. By allowing myself to rely on my game guide, by not feeling like I had to do everything by myself and for myself, it let me build my own skills, foster my own talents, become my own best self, my best avatar, so that he then needed to rely on me. Now, don't get me wrong, my goal was never to become an expert player. It was never to race to the end of the game. Some days I would just log in and wander around and marvel at the incredible beauty, do those things that I don't have time to actually do in real life. As I got braver and braver, I decided I wanted to log in by myself. I loved playing with my game guide, but I also wanted to test my progress. So one day I logged in and realized I was in over my head, that the quests were getting harder, and I, from the second that I entered the world, started getting attacked. Well, my suffering must have been apparent because another player came to my rescue. And on the bottom of the screen in the chat log, I saw this conversation. I saw this character, Superhuman, say to me, "Do you need help?" And I said, "Well, are you talking to me?" And he said, "Yes, do you want help?" And yes, I really, really wanted help. So I said, "Okay." And so Superhuman came to my aid and helped me finish this quest. And when we were finished, he said to me, "Is there anything else you need help with?" And I said to him, "Well, why are you helping me?" And he said, "I feel like helping." Now, I was amazed, and I was pleased by this. I was pleased by the human condition I saw at work here. But I also felt like I had to keep my guard up. And so I said to him, "Well, you know how in real life you'd never really trust?" This is a real conversation, guys. You know how in real life you'd never really accept help from a stranger? What makes this different? And he paused, and then he typed onto the screen, "I've never really thought about that before." And I said, "Well, don't I have to worry about bad intentions?" And he answered, "Nope." So this experience made me wonder. I didn't know that one was going to get a laugh. This experience made me wonder, how is it that in the real world, good deeds have gotten so entangled with bad intentions that we don't know when to trust the kind hand of a helping stranger anymore? Trust is essential for any community or any relationship to grow. And yet, are we conditioning ourselves as a society to outgrow being trusting? So Superhuman, he was logging in because he wanted to be kind. We hear a lot about people logging into these game worlds for that feeling of accomplishment. People logging in for the sense of community. I was there searching for meaning. Superhuman was in the virtual world because he wanted to be kind, and he felt like he couldn't in the real world. Now, I'm not saying that everyone has to start playing video games, but the bottom line is we all want to be happy. We want to be loved for who we are. We want to find a place in a community. Our technologies, they can isolate us, or they can bring us together. They can be distractions, or they can be inspirations. By thinking of the real world and the virtual world as two separate things, at best, the time we spend online is a hobby, and at worst, it's an addiction. It's scary. But when we start thinking about the virtual world as an extension of our real lives, all of a sudden, the time that we spend in virtual worlds is time that we're meeting new people. We're fostering our skills. We're becoming our best selves. And if we apply it to the real world, we can live epic lives. The last avatar secret I'm going to share with you guys today has to do with straying from the path and taking risks. I'd been playing for a while now, and we had to get from one region of the game to another, and distances are vast. So my game guide took me on a shortcut through a forest. But he warned me, "Do not do this by yourself. You won't stand a chance." So I heeded his advice, and when I logged in by myself, I realized if I just stuck to the paths, I'd be safe. But it took forever to get anywhere. And when I did want to complete a quest, a challenge, I realized that I couldn't do it on the path. I had to venture off of the path into the uncharted territory. So how does this apply to real life? That's avatar secret number 6, knowing when to stray from the path. When I started playing this game, I was taking a detour. I was searching for answers to some of life's biggest questions. I was moving home to Toronto from New York. There was an illness in my family. I had just been through a breakup. And while I'm sure to many, all of you, a video game seems like the least likely place to be searching for this kind of sage wisdom, I was straying from my path. I was scared. I knew nothing about this world. This was totally new territory. I was scared of not knowing what I was doing. I was scared of people being mean. I was scared of being humiliated. But what did I have to lose? Nothing. And what did I have to gain? Potentially a whole lot. Stephen Gillette is the CIO of Starbucks, and he credits his success to having played World of Warcraft and having been a guild leader, a group leader. I know people who have found their soulmates, their best friends, their colleagues in the virtual world, and the one thing that all of those examples have in common is that they think of these two realms, the real world and the virtual world, as extensions of each other. The fear that I had when I started playing isn't unique to video games. It's the fear that stops us from taking risks in the real world. It's the fear that stops us from starting that new company. It's the fear that stops us from saying, I love you first. It's the fear that leads us to regret. I have seen people overcome those fears. I've seen them become more outgoing, change everything from the way they wear their hair to the way they tackle real-world challenges based on their fearless avatars. For me, the pivotal moment was realizing how much these virtual worlds can fulfill our primal human needs and how by applying it to the real world, it can actually help us live better, real lives in the real world. Now, between teaching and running a production company, it's often hard to find time to play. But when I do, I still try and log in every now and then. And when I'm in a bind, I find myself asking, what would my avatar do? Thank you.